And we're back for episode number 52 of Are You Quizzing Me, your favorite quizzing trivia podcast show. Before we start our usual proceedings, there is an announcement I have to make. Just like last week, this episode will also have a poll on Spotify. Please go to that poll and vote whether we should retain our opening music or just discard it forever. Now that we've got that out of the way, let me start off today's proceedings with our usual audience question. And this is something I'm fairly sure that most of you will get by the end of the episode. So the development of this movie began back in 1994 and filming was supposed to start in 1999. However, the director did not do so because, according to him, the necessary technology was not yet available to make it. He said his inspiration was every single science fiction book he had read as a kid, and he wanted to update the style of Edgar Rice Burroughs' John Carter series. Which film am I talking about? I will reveal the answer to this question at the end of today's episode. And we now move on to our old faithful Aditya, who will be answering the question that he asked last week.
All right. So my question last week was the Indian equivalent of the Raspberry Awards. Raspberry Awards being the tongue-in-cheek parody of Oscars in Hollywood. So what would the Indian equivalent of the Raspberry Awards be? And here I was thinking of something fruity, vegetable along those lines, because the raspberry obviously is a berry. So I thought, why not a coconut? But not a coconut award. It would be called a Nariyal award, because it is na real. It's not real. A Nariyal award is what the Indian equivalent of a raspberry award should be called. A Nariyal award.
Okay, now that is quite an answer, but I couldn't get past the fact that you were saying that a raspberry award is a tongue-in-cheek award, when we made it quite clear last week that the raspberry is a sound that you make when your tongue comes outside your cheek.
Vineet, I was editing that episode and you have no idea how entertaining it was to just hear us do that. I think I replayed that part of the podcast multiple times. It was just a lot of fun. So if any of our listeners have not heard the previous episode, this is the moment to go hear it, just to hear us blow a raspberry.
Yes. So I'm going to start off today's regular questions with a food-based question, something we've not done in quite a while. The origins of this dish can be traced back to casseroles of 14th century Italy and medieval England. James Hemmings, a classically trained French chef, enslaved by US President Thomas Jefferson, was instrumental in bringing the recipe to the United States after Jefferson encountered it in Paris. Jefferson actually drew a sketch of one of the major components of the dish and wrote detailed notes on how to make it. In 1793, he commissioned the US ambassador to France, William Short, to actually purchase a machine for making it. Evidently, they were not able to do so, and the machine was not suitable, as Jefferson later imported both the major two ingredients. And in 1802, Jefferson served the dish at a state dinner. Which dish am I talking about?
Sorry, what are the two ingredients?
No, I've not mentioned the two ingredients.
Oh, okay.
So he actually drew the shape of one of the ingredients, and he gave his chef detailed instructions on how to make it. He even imported a machine to do so. But in the end, none of that worked out, so he ended up having to import both the two major ingredients, and he served it at a state dinner to, heads of state at a state dinner at the White House in 1802.
Jefferson, right?
Yes, Thomas Jefferson.
So you're saying shape, and you're saying he imported a machine.
I shouldn't have said shape.
I'm wondering if it is some sort of a pasta?
You would not be wrong.
Okay. So then it leads me to one of the fancier looking pastas. Is it the butterfly one? I'm going to butcher the pronunciation.
It's
Pappardelle? Is that
pappardelle,
how
right?
it's
Pappardelle.
Pappardelle?
Pappardelle.
Oh, that sounds the best Italian impression. Yes, Pappardelle. So, is it
No,
that?
it's not.
Okay. Are we talking like a tortellini?
No. No, none of those.
Okay, so we're not that fancy a shape. Was it just a simple lasagna?
No.
Lasagna
No,
sheets?
no. You know that there are hundreds of types of pasta. You'll have to.
Yeah, this doesn't seem like I'm going under out. Oh, you know what? Since you said two ingredients,
Yeah.
could it be a mac and cheese?
Yes, it is indeed a mac and cheese. Something that we associate as being comfort food. And nowadays it's commercialized and commoditized that you get powdered mac and cheese, which is an abomination of nature, in my opinion. But it first made its appearance in America, where it's considered a comfort food, as something for the president and in the White House and being served at state dinners. So I found that dichotomy quite interesting.
Very cool. I love it. Mac and cheese being served as a state dinner. Who would have thought? All right. So, for my first question of the week, I will take help from a regular listener.
Oh,
And this is a listener who reached out to us on email. A lovely point to remind any of our listeners right now that you can do the same. Send us an email on areyoukquizzingme@gmail.com. You can tag either of us, whoever you want it to be asking the question, tag them in the subject and they will ask the question. So Arjun Srikumar, this gentleman reached out to us and he tagged me in the email and he asked me to ask you three questions actually. So a lot of my heavy lifting for the week is done by Arjun. Thank you, Arjun. He has also given a source for two of those questions, which is his unofficial pop culture recommendation, something else that he enjoys from our podcast. So I guess I'll share that on his behalf.
great.
So, Vineet, this is a cricket based question. And I'm so glad Arjun asked me to ask you because I suck at these as well.
Oh, God. People can't see my face right now, but my face literally just fell.
No. Let's make this as easy as can be made for you. The first question: the first ever instance of an Indian Test cricketer featuring in an advertisement was in an edition of Mohammadi, a Bengali monthly journal, in 1938. The tagline for the product ran, "For a life full of vitality." Name the cricketer and the product. By the way, "For a life full of vitality" was in Bengali. I'm translating it to English for the purpose of this question. Name the cricketer and the product.
Would it be fair if I asked, is it a cricketer I would have heard of? Because you know how poor my cricketing knowledge is.
Fair enough. I guess I don't know how much you do follow cricket, not a lot, I imagine. This particular cricketer, and I'll give you a hint that Arjun has very kindly provided us, has a T20 tournament named after him. It's a domestic T20 championship held in India, and it's named after this particular cricketer.
Okay, I think I have a better chance of cracking the product.
Yeah. Okay, so you know what? I'm going to help you along slightly more. I'll give you one more hint. In case you don't get it, I'll just give you the name of the cricketer and then you can help me crack the name of the product. The second hint for the cricketer is that he was the first Indian to hit an away Test 100. First ever Indian to hit an away Test 100. He scored 112 against England at the Old Trafford in 1936.
Maharaja Ranjit Singh?
No.
Ranji Trophy, Ranjit Singh? No, obviously not. Yeah, no.
Ranji Trophy is not a T20 tournament anyways.
Okay. Let me just try the product, right? We are looking at a product which was sold in India in the 30s, right? And the tagline was "For a life full of vitality."
Mm-hmm.
So my first and frankly only guess at this point is it Cadbury Bonvita?
How did you get it?
Vita, vitality.
Oh God, that was so easy. I was trying to think of hints that I'd have to give for Bonvita, but oof, that was.
No, because I know the Bonvita is a really old product. I've seen older ads of Bonvita, the cans of Bonvita and all. And the vitality thing kind of gave it away.
Vineet, you don't have to justify that you're smart. It's fine. We get it. Just bask in the glory of how insanely
Yes.
good you are at tracking these questions.
And now I will be humbly brought back down to the earth by the fact that I do not know the name of this apparently legendary cricketer. Oh God.
For any of our listeners who are cricket fans, they probably have heard of this gentleman's name. For both of us, it is a TIL, I guess. It is Saeed Mushtaq Ali.
Oh, I have heard of him,
Oh, okay.
but only by name. I don't know anything more about him, but the name is familiar. I have heard the name. When I attend quizzes and people more intelligent than me in sports keep answering questions, I've heard this name somewhere over there.
Possible, possible. His son and his grandson also played first class cricket. The domestic T20 series is named after him. He lived a pretty long life. He passed away at the ripe old age of 90. So, yeah, he was around for a while and definitely left quite the mark on the Indian cricketing scene.
Nice. So he was the first cricketer to endorse a product.
First ever ad by a cricketer in India was by Saeed Mushtaq Ali. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Okay. So, Broken Horses is a 2015 crime thriller film directed by X and starring Anton Yelchin, Chris Marquette, Vincent D'Onofrio, Maria Valverde, Thomas Jane, and Sean Patrick Flannery. The film was a remake of a 1989 crime thriller, which was also directed by the same director, who was last nominated for an Oscar in 1979. The film had a mostly negative reception from critics. However, X had one of the best reviewed films on IMDb in 2023. I want you to identify the director. So I'll just go through the facts once again. Broken Horses is a 2015 crime thriller film directed by X, starring Anton Yelchin, Vincent D'Onofrio, Thomas Jane, Sean Patrick Flannery. It is a remake of a 1989 crime thriller, also directed by the same director, and this director was last nominated for an Oscar in 1979. The film Broken Horses received mostly a negative reception, though X, the director, had one of the best reviewed films on IMDb in 2023. So I want you to identify the director.
All right. So 1989 was the original. 2015 was Broken Horses. 2023, one of the highest rated films on IMDb.
Was directed by the same director.
Okay. Nice, long, prolific career. 30 years. More than 30 years. Broken Horses, the cast sounds very international.
Thomas Jane from the Punisher series. Sean Patrick Flannery, I think, was in the Boondock Saints. Anton Yelchin famously played, I think, Chekhov in the Star Trek remakes.
Wow. Okay. So 2023, one of the highest rated films. But you also said that his last nomination.
So let me just put it in chronological order. 1979, he was nominated for an Oscar. He's never received an Oscar nomination after that. He made a crime thriller in 1989, which was very well received. And then in 2015, he made a remake of the same film called Broken Horses. And in 2023, he directed a film which is one of the most best reviewed films on IMDb, which has also been sent for the Oscars.
You're saying nominated. Should I assume that he has never won an Oscar, so that nomination didn't result?
No, he did not win the Oscar.
Okay. And that nomination was as a director?
Yes. As a director, yeah, he was... Okay, I'll give it to you. It was a short movie category, basically. You will be nominated as a director. There is no specific director nomination, but it was for a short film. It was called An Encounter with Faces.
Seems very indie, sounds very indie, but yeah, doesn't ring any bell. Any other hint?
Okay. Let's see.
Okay, you know what? Let me ask. Do you think I've heard of the 2023 film at least?
Yes. So I know you've seen the 2023 film. I know you've seen the 1989 crime thriller. I know for a fact you know this director. But I also know that you've not seen Broken Horses.
Okay, I definitely haven't seen Broken Horses. The rest of it, I'll have to take your word on it that I do know. And
Okay, the 1989 film when it was screened for the producers and the distributors, they had a suggestion to the director. So it's a very tragic crime thriller, anyway, the original 1989. One of the major stars and the female lead in the movie are killed. The director was asked by the producers and the distributors not to do that. As in, don't let the main lead and the female lead die at the end of the movie. But he stuck to his guns and it turned into be a classic.
Saying crime thriller 1989, around the time, I think Goodfellas is around that time. I don't know why I'm going to Martin Scorsese, but I know Broken Horse is not a film Martin Scorsese has made.
No.
I also know he has gotten Oscar nominations post 1979.
Yes.
Not Scorsese.
The 2023 film, I think when I last checked, it had a rating of 9.2 on IMDb.
What? And
Yes.
I've seen this film. I can't remember any film from last year that I loved that much.
No, definitely you've seen this film. I know that for a fact. Which are the best films of 2023 that you've seen?
I can't think of a single Hollywood film that I loved that much. I thought Oppenheimer was decent. I thought Barbie was okay.
Okay, I'll give you an additional clue. The 1989 crime thriller that was directed by X was not in English.
Oh, wow. That's a little curveball you threw me there. I've been thinking of all these American directors or Hollywood directors. Okay.
Yes.
All right. That opens up the field a little bit more. 2023 films that I liked then. I loved Past Lives, but I know that was a directorial debut, so it can't be the Korean director. She is phenomenal, but that was her first feature film. Is it an Indian director?
Oh, yes, it is an Indian director.
Just because you said I love this film, and if you know that, I know there are very few films that I've told you I love from last year. Is it 12th Fail then?
Yes, so then who would the director be?
Vindu Vinod Chopra.
Yes, it is Vidhu Vinod Chopra. And so which is the 1989 crime thriller then?
Oh, it's Parinde.
Parinda.
Sorry, yes.
Let me just put it in a neat little package for our audience. Vidhu Vinod Chopra is an Indian director. He was nominated for an Oscar in 1979 for his short film An Encounter with Faces. In 1989, he directed this cult classic crime thriller Bollywood movie by the name of Parinda. The distributors really did not want Anil Kapoor and Madhuri Dixit to die. They wanted Jackie Shroff to die, but he stuck to his guns and that just made it a classic. He remade Parinda in Hollywood in 2015, calling it Broken Horses. It's kind of like a western. However, the movie bombed. He picked himself up, and in 2023, he made what, in my opinion, is one of the best films of the year. It's called 12th Fail. It has a very high rating on IMDb. Very emotionally engaging film, and it's also been independently sent for the Oscars. The director and producer team are campaigning independently for the Oscars because the Indian... Do you know which is the Indian submission to the Oscars this year for Best Foreign Film?
Oh, no, I have no idea.
It's a Malayali movie. It's a Keralite movie by the name of 2018. It's a movie on the 2018 floods. It was shot on a shoestring budget, and when you watch that movie, you wouldn't believe. It's just brilliant. So coming back to it, the answer is Vidhu Vinod Chopra.
Very cool. That is a very fun question, and he has remade Parinda. I had no idea.
Yes, he did remake Parinda.
And 12th Fail was, I believe, one of my recommendations for pop culture recommendations in our episode. I remember that.
Yeah. I really loved the movie. I was in tears by the end.
Same, yeah. And when I recommended it, it wasn't generating as much of a buzz because it had just come out. And
Yeah.
now it feels like such an obvious recommendation. Okay, lovely question. Thank you for asking that. That's a lovely TIL for me. Okay, let's go back to Mr. Sri Kumar's questions. Arjun has another question from the world of cricket. This one actually is a really fun question.
You know, I know why he sent it to you. I have a feeling this guy hates me. We've made it quite obvious on this podcast that I don't know anything about sports and cricket. So he specifically sent those questions to you so that you could torture me with them.
I do want to remind you, Vineet, that I also suck at this. So I think he just made a judgment call on who sucks lesser. If anything, he's vouching for you right now. Okay. I'm rooting for you. I think you can crack this one. Kabhi Ajnabi The was a 1985 movie starring cricket stars Sandeep Patil and Saeed Kirmani. Now, if you're aware of these two cricketers, they were both in the 83 squad. So in 1985, this movie was creating a lot of buzz because it was a Bollywood debut for Sandeep Patil and Saeed Kirmani. So everybody was very excited for it. The movie didn't do too well though. Patil played a cricketer in the movie. Apart from these two, which other cricketer had a role as an extra in this film?
Which other cricketer had an role as an extra? Okay, going by the era, my first guess would be Kapil Dev,
No.
Mohindra Amarnath.
So nobody from the 83 squad.
Okay. Wait, Viv Richards used to have some connections to Bollywood and things like that, right? He had an affair with Neena Gupta at one point. So is it Viv Richards?
No, it isn't Vivian Richards either. This cricketer, let's speak about his filmography. So he has been part of films since then as well.
Okay.
And a lot of those films have been documentaries or docudramas about his career. There was a 2023 film also. This particular film was a fictional film. In 2017, there was a documentary that was also released based on his career and his life. So these are the different films that he has done over the years, apart from the 1985 film that I mentioned, Kabhi Ajnabi The.
The recent one you said was fictional, right?
Yeah, the 2023 film. Not very famous, but yeah, it is part of his filmography.
I remember Azharuddin had a movie come out recently, right? But that was not 23. I think Imran Hashmi was playing him.
Nope, that wasn't Azharuddin. Let me give you a little bit more of a clue over here.
Okay.
In this scene where this cricketer is featured and he's featured as an extra, Sandeep Patil's character has to meet some young cricketers, and that's where he meets this particular cricketer.
Okay, so this is somebody who was young in the 80s.
Correct.
Any other clues that you could possibly give me? An age range or when this cricketer played?
Honestly, the only thing I can say is, Vineet, you have no excuses. You can be the least involved and least knowledgeable about cricket. I don't care. But if you don't get this cricketer's name, it is just...
Okay. Oh, okay. But wait. You said there are documentaries made about this person, and you also said that there is no excuse for not knowing this person's name. Is Sachin Tendulkar?
Sachin Tendulkar. It is Sachin Tendulkar. I love this. It's a really cool piece of trivia. I would have never known this.
He acted in a movie.
As a 10-year-old, was an extra in this film. As a young cricketer who's meeting Sandeep Patil's character in the film. How freaking amazing is that?
That is a bomber piece of trivia. Thank you, Arjun. Thank you so much. It was worth getting tortured for that, but it is really, really an amazing piece of trivia.
By the way, Arjun's pop culture recommendation is The Great Indian Cricket Circus, which is a cricket book by Joy Bhattacharya and Abhishek Mukherjee. And this is the source for both those questions. So it is his pop culture recommendation for the week. And we will pass it on to our audience and recommend they check it out as well. He does have a third question, which I will ask you right after you ask your next question. But let me add on to this particular question. So Kabhi Ajnabi The featured Sachin Tendulkar in a cameo role. It also featured two other cricket personalities in cameos.
Okay.
One of these cricketing personalities is immortalized in the world of cricket, especially in Mumbai.
Wankhede.
Yes, it is S.K. Wankhede, Shesh Rao, Krishan Rao Wankhede, who was a cricket administrator and politician. So he was not a cricketer per se, but he was a cricket administrator and he contributed a fair bit to the cricket scene in this country. And he was immortalized when the stadium in Mumbai was named Wankhede Stadium after him. The other person, well, this has nothing to do with the general world trivia, but one of my closest friends in school is this guy's nephew. Not that you know my friend at all, but this particular cricketer was a right-handed batsman. He played for India in 22 test matches. He's also the oldest son of a former captain of Indian cricket team.
His father was a captain of the Indian cricket team.
Yeah.
Mohinder Amarnath.
No. There is a very interesting term named after him in cricket, after the father who was the captain, which is basically
But I know this. This is Vinu Mankad.
wow, he didn't have to give you the clue. Well done. Yeah, mankading, for anybody who might not be aware, is the practice of getting the non-striker out if they leave the crease early. And one of the earliest examples, or most famous example, is of Vinu Mankad doing that in 1947, apparently. So Vinu Mankad's eldest son, Ashok Mankad,
Okay.
was an Indian cricketer who was also in this film and is the uncle of a very close school friend of mine.
Very nice, very nice.
I felt personally associated to this question. So just to wrap it up, Kabhi Ajnabi The was a 1985 film. It featured Sandeep Patil and Syed Kirmani, both coming off of the 1983 World Cup fame, and it featured cameos by Sachin Tendulkar, S.K. Wankhede, and Ashok Mankad.
Okay, now that you've tortured me with this cricket trivia, let me ask you a follow-up one. I don't have the exact details in front of me, but I remember the broad strokes. A simple question. Which was the first national team that Sachin Tendulkar played for?
Saying India would be too easy and Vineet would not throw such easy ones at me.
This is a technicality. It is a technicality, but I've always taken it to be, the whole fact, basically.
I feel like he's substituted in for somebody or something like that. I have a vague memory of this trivia, but I am also not too sure. I'm just going to take a guess. Is it Pakistan?
Yes. Sachin Tendulkar actually played for the Pakistan team. Before anybody starts stoning me and sending death threats, let me just tell you the scenario. If I remember correctly, it was the Mumbai Cricket Club's centenary celebration or something like that. And the Pakistan team had come to play a couple of matches. Before they started playing any official matches, there was a kind of a practice match going on informal practice match going on between the Indian and the Pakistani teams. A few of the Pakistani players then left in between to go back to the hotel. And so the Pakistan team was one person short. At that point, the Pakistani captain asked if anybody could sub in. A young Sachin Tendulkar raised his hand and asked the Indian team captain's permission whether he could just go and sub in. He subbed in and played for the Pakistan team for the rest of that match. So even though you wouldn't find any records which will tell you that Sachin was capped for a match with Pakistan, you could technically say that he played with the Pakistani national team before he did the Indian national team.
All thoughts and opinions expressed by Vineet are entirely his. It does not represent my thoughts and opinions. Please, if you want to cancel him, make sure you do only him. And I will find a new co-host for this podcast. Just claiming Sachin Tendulkar played for Pakistan is just why Vineet? Are you done with this podcast? Do you want us to end?
As I mentioned again, he didn't actually play for the team. He just subbed in for a small practice match, which I think a lot of people have done.
Fair enough. No, that's an interesting piece of trivia.
Okay, so now it's my turn. In 1793, the USA was supposed to adopt something. To this end, they ordered the components essential for said adoption from Europe. However, the ship carrying it was hijacked by pirates in 1793 and it never made to the States. Around 50 years later, the USA finally adopted it by law. But it's still not used anywhere in the USA. So what did they adopt?
The meter.
Oh, you got that too quickly. Yes, it is the metric system. So I found this fact fascinating that the brand new United States of America in 1793, they needed a standard measuring system because all the different states were using a hodgepodge of systems. For example, in New York, they were using Dutch systems. In New England, they were using English systems. So they decided that they required to use a standardized system. So, the Secretary of State at that time was Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson knew about the new French system and thought that this is just what America needs. So he wrote to his pals in France, and they sent a scientist named Joseph Dombey off to Jefferson carrying a small copper cylinder with a little handle on top. It was about 3 inches tall and about the same wide. This was intended to be a standard for weighing things, part of a weights and measure system being developed in France, now known as the metric system. And the object's weight was 1 kilogram. While he was crossing the Atlantic, Dombey ran into a huge storm. It blew his ship quite far south into the Caribbean Sea. And if Jerry Bruckheimer has taught us anything, the Caribbean were full of pirates. They took Joseph Dombey prisoner and they auctioned off all the contents of the ship. And because of that, the metric system never reached America. Now, this is the really interesting part. Even though America does not use the metric system, by law, America has adopted the metric system. In 1866, Congress authorized the use of the metric system in the US and supplied each state with a set of standard metric weights and measures. However, Americans still refuse to use it. And so we are left with things like the McDonald's quarter pounder instead of the McDonald's 113 grams.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I thought it was a meter, but you mentioned the kilogram, so I guess I had that a little confused. But yes, I have heard of this trivia before.
It is the metric system. The answer was the metric system, so I would have taken either the case. But I just found this really interesting that America does not have the metric system, at least now, because if they had adopted it that early, they probably would have followed it.
I wonder if they just weren't too keen. They were like, okay, let's give it a shot. And when it didn't arrive on time, they're like, screw it, it's fine. We'll just go with the more senseless system of feet and pounds and gallons for some stupid reason which makes no sense at all.
But to be honest, let's just be fair. While America gets a lot of flack for being one of the few countries in the world that does not use the metric system, let's remind ourselves that there is a country where people are measured in stone.
Oh, I know this. So which country is that?
It's the UK. There, a stone is a measurement of weight. So instead of saying that you weigh so many kilograms or so many pounds, people will actually say, oh, he weighs 7 stone. I mean, like, that's more ridiculous than pounds.
That is, I guess, a valid point. Yeah. Okay, now that you've asked this question and you brought up America and international treaties, so here's something very similar. I'm sure you've heard of the Treaty of Versailles.
Yes.
This was a treaty, in case somebody doesn't know, was signed right after World War I. It was a document that kind of brought about an end to the First World War, and it also had a few additions to satisfy the major players. Now, war activity in France had destroyed a lot of its economy, especially one of its most famous exports. So, to placate France in some way, Article 275 was added to the Treaty of Versailles. Its purpose was to prevent Germany from taking advantage of the situation of the decimation of a certain product in France and flooding the market with its own version. So Article 275 was meant to protect that and to prevent Germany from doing so. However, US was not a signatory to the Treaty of Versailles. Hence, one of these key things which around the world people adhered to, the US for the longest time did not. Which product am I talking about? Do you know what Article 275 in the Treaty of Versailles was added for? What was it trying to protect?
So you said that the US was not party to it, so they shipped the item to France?
They kept exporting the item in a manner of speaking.
The war decimated this particular thing, so they didn't want Germany to flood it with their version, you said.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so it's obviously something that's French, which has a German version.
Yeah.
Is this the hamburger?
No. But you're in the right industry, I guess. Food and beverage.
Then because you said Germany, I would say sausages.
All right, let's put food aside. So beverage.
Okay. Okay, it's a beverage. It's a beverage. and France. Champagne.
I have to give it to you. Yeah, that is a great crack. But do you know the exact context of this?
The vineyards of Champagne were destroyed.
Exactly. So the Champagne region was terribly affected because of First World War, and the winemaking capacity was decimated in some way. Germany had winemaking facilities, but to make sure that they did not sort of completely flood the market with their own version of champagne or rather sparkling wine, they decided that the word champagne can only refer to sparkling wine that is made in Champagne.
Okay, nice.
However, the US, which was not a signatory, did not need to abide by this rule. So, sparkling wine created in California wineries continued to be called champagne. And it is one of the only places in the world which was producing champagne apart from Champagne in France. And in 2005, finally, the United States agreed to champagne only being referred to wine made in Champagne, except for certain brands which had been already using it. So there's a little loophole that the United States managed to sneak into this. But interesting that just because the US did not sign the Treaty of Versailles, they could continue making champagne, whereas the rest of the world had to cease and desist and could only call it sparkling wine and could not call it champagne.
Okay. I am now going to ask you a question about a particular product. In Chicago, a scrappy 19-year-old Kentucky farm boy named Thomas Williams watched with curiosity as his older sister did something using a homemade concoction. Seeing dollar signs in his sister's eyes, Williams borrowed his buddy's chemistry set and got busy tweaking her formula, which she had dubbed the secret of the harem. After many trials and tweaks of the formula, he launched the product, naming it after his sister and putting her face on the box. This brand is almost a household name today. Which brand?
Did he say secret of the harem?
That's what his sister called it.
And what is the time frame for this?
1915.
1915 was when he launched this product.
Yes.
Is it something that you eat?
No. It is not a food item, but it was a homemade item. At least the version that his sister was using was a homemade version.
Ah, I see. No, I'll need some sort of a hint over here.
This brand is currently the world's leading brand in its category. This particular brand sells roughly one of its products every 2 seconds.
I was going to say some cleaning product. I was thinking either a detergent or some sort of...
I would advise you to pay attention to what his sister called the product. The secret of the harem.
Yeah, secret of the harem. You want to keep the harem clean. Well, not that. If you're not talking a cleaning product, it's not a food or drink either. Oh, is it some sort of personal care? Some cream or makeup or something?
Yes.
Oh, wow. The biggest makeup brand.
I'll give you the ingredients of his sister's homemade concoction. That should tell you the product, frankly speaking. Coal dust ashes, burnt cork, and petroleum jelly.
Okay, this sounds like a... Is it like an eyeliner sort of a thing?
Yeah, you're very much in the ballpark.
Okay. And you said he put her image on the product.
Yes, he named it after her as well.
Oh, he named it after her. Oh, is it Maybelline?
Yes, it is Maybelline. His sister's name was Mabel. And if you paid attention to the ingredients, one of the ingredients was petroleum jelly, which was known as Vaseline. So Mabel plus Vaseline equals Maybelline.
Oh, that is so smart. I love it. That is a really cool question. Nice.
So if you didn't know, Maybelline, now owned by L'Oreal, has risen to become the world's leading cosmetics brand. To this day, this household brand sells one of its trademark green and pink packaged Great Lash mascara tubes every 2 seconds.
Wow.
That's the origin of Maybelline, ladies and gentlemen.
Very cool. Love that question. And I guess this will be the last question for our episode. And I will go back to Arjun, who was generous enough to give us 3 questions. So I'm going to end with one of his questions.
Before Aditya asks this question, I'm going to officially request Arjun, if you're listening to this podcast, thank you first of all for sending these 3 questions. And then I would very much appreciate it if you could send me 3 exclusively very tough trivia questions from cricket specifically so that I can ask those questions to Aditya. I'd be very grateful. Thank you in advance.
Honestly, Arjun, you could send anything in sports and it would be equally tough for me. So feel free to use football, cricket, basketball, baseball, any other choice of sport that you have. Okay, let's ask you the question. What was unique about Sunil Gavaskar's innings in the second innings of Bombay versus Karnataka Ranji Trophy semi-final at the Chinnaswamy Stadium in Bangalore during the 81-82 season?
He wasn't injured.
Are you implying that Sunil Gavaskar was always injured otherwise?
Oh, I don't know. The 83 World Cup? No, I don't know. I'm just kidding. I really don't know this. You'll have to give me a clue to see if I can guess this one.
So the match was a very interesting match. What happened was Karnataka's left arm spinner Raghuram Bhatt was almost unplayable in that match. So Gavaskar, who played for Bombay, realized he needed something to counter Raghuram Bhatt, who was clearly dominating it with his left arm spinning. That's when he decided to do something which was unique about his innings in this particular match that has never happened before or after in his career.
Did he like play the entire innings? Just, I think they're called dot balls.
No, not in this case. It is actually a significant departure, if I may say so, from what would be considered Gavaskar's usual style. In fact, when he discussed this particular change with the Bombay manager Sharad Divadkar, the latter was horrified. But Gavaskar had made up his mind, so he decided to go ahead with it anyways.
Why would he be horrified? Wait, was this something like where he intentionally gave up his wicket so that somebody else who coming up lower up in the order could play against him or something like that?
No, in fact, what happened was he actually managed to stick it out through the entire innings. Karnataka never got his wicket.
Any other clues? Ladies and gentlemen who are listening to this podcast, please understand that I really don't know anything about cricket. So you'll have to wait until Aditya kind of holds me by the hand and takes me to the answer.
Speaking of hand, that should give you a clue.
Wait, what? Oh, wait. Did he switch hands?
Perfect! There you go!
Wait, really?
Only time in his career that Gavaskar stepped onto the crease and decided to play left-handed. So that is what was unique about that game, that he decided to play left-handed instead of his usual right-handed, and he actually managed to stick it out. So the particular bowler Raghuram Bhatt, who was dominating the entire innings with his left arm spin, was actually not able to get Gavaskar's wicket, even though he managed to get a few other batsmen out.
Very nice, very nice.
Vineet, this was supposed to be the last question, but to be fair to you, there were 3 cricketing questions today. So I'm going to give you one redemption question, and just because I really like this question as well.
Okay.
So I read this piece of trivia and I had to go search for where it was originally from. Turns out it was in an archive of Cinema del Cilindro, which is an Italian cinema based website, film based website. And in the archives, I found this particular interview. I had to translate it, and it gave me a little beautiful piece of trivia. This particular director was asked why he made the choice for the lead actor in his film, an iconic film, iconic director, iconic lead actor. But when he did choose this particular actor, he was practically an unknown. And the director responded, "The truth? More than an actor, I needed a mask." And X is the actor, and X at that time only had 2 expressions: with a hat and without a hat. So I went with him. Which particular director actor combination am I talking about?
With a hat and without a hat. Is this Clint Eastwood?
Oh, that is such a beautiful crack. Yes, it is Clint Eastwood. Eastwood got that part because he had only two expressions, apparently, with a hat and without a hat.
Okay, so this will be the director of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Sergio Leone,
Sergio Leone, Sergio Leone, yes, yes.
the man with no name, is the name of the character. Or at least that's how he's referred to. And yeah, that's how Clint Eastwood got the part.
Man with the hat, without a hat. Okay, I really like that one. Obviously, Sergio Leone said this before he saw Clint Eastwood act in Heartbreak Ridge, because there he has three expressions: annoyed, more annoyed, less annoyed. So that, I think, is all the time we have for this episode. Let me now go to Aditya and ask him, what's your question for this week?
Okay, so you mentioned weird measuring systems across the world, and I wanted to ask you, what is the strange measuring system used for Hollywood celebrities?
Okay, so you will find out the answer to that question next week. Let us go now to the question that I asked at the beginning of today's episode. The development of this movie began back in 1994, and filming was supposed to start by 1999. However, it was not done so because the director said that the necessary technology was not yet available to make the film. He said that his inspiration was every single science fiction book he had ever read as a kid, and then he wanted to update the style of Edgar Rice Burroughs' John Carter series. He acknowledged that the movie, shares themes with films at Play in the Fields of the Lord, The Emerald Forest, and Princess Mononoke. Can you tell me which film this is, and for bonus points, who the director is, Aditya?
Are we talking James Cameron?
Yes, it is James Cameron, and the movie is then obviously
Avatar.
yes. So that is the end of today's episode questions. Let's now move to the pop culture recommendation for this week. Aditya, what's your recommendation?
So, to repeat Arjun's recommendation one more time, the book Great Indian Cricket Circus, from which he had two lovely pieces of trivia to share with us today. Thank you, Arjun, one more time for sharing that. Audience, please go ahead and send us more questions if you have. And for my own pop culture recommendation, Vineet, you mentioned a shoestring budget Malayalam film, 2018. Speaking of films made on a very tiny budget but having an outsized impact, I have to recommend Godzilla -1.
Oh, yes, I've heard very good things about it. So my recommendation for this week is a book, a non-fiction book. Everybody's heard of Amundsen and Scott and their race towards the South Pole. Scott, because of his the fact that his expedition was doomed despite reaching the South Pole, and Amundsen for the fact that he did so quite quickly. The third party in this race to reach the South Pole was Ernest Shackleton. A contradiction of a man, someone who's not very adept while in England in his regular life, but the moment you put him in a crisis, there's nobody else you want leading the expedition than Shackleton himself. So I was going to recommend a book by another person who's also an amazing explorer, probably the last big explorer of our age, Sir Ranulph Fiennes. So the book's name is Shackleton. And that's all for this episode. Thank you for listening in. We hope you enjoyed the show and learned something new. If you liked what you heard, please consider subscribing to our podcast. And please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Not even 5% of the people listening to our podcast are actually subscribing. I don't know what that says about our podcast, but I'm just hoping that people are forgetting to. So I'm going to remind you guys, please subscribe to our podcast, leave us a review. This helps more people to discover and enjoy the show. I had at the beginning of the episode also mentioned that we have a poll going on Spotify, so please go and register your opinions on that particular poll. We'd also love to hear from you, feedback, suggestions, and trivia. We appreciate your support and look forward to sharing more episodes with you in the future. Thank you again for tuning in. Have a great day or a great night, as it may be.
See you guys next week.